Some people in this world are on the front lines of the struggle between good and evil, and some, like us, bear witness. I'm Therese Apel.
And I'm Nicole Crowell. You may have heard us as we worked on stories and series about law enforcement and crime. And it's safe to say we've seen some of the best and worst of human nature.
We decided there's no greater honor than bringing you the stories of the men and women who seek out the monsters, who speak for the victims, and who put the pieces together on some of the biggest Mississippi crime stories of our time. Welcome to Investigation Homicide. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Investigation Homicide. Thank you guys for joining us today. So I want to go ahead and say, well, first, let me say that Nicole is not here today. So we have our second chair being held down by our co-host, Amanda Johansson.
Hello. Nicole's doppelganger, I guess.
That's right. Yeah, all my friends are cute brunettes with big brown eyes. So
Thank you.
So what we're doing today, and I'm excited about this because 2,000 years ago, I saw a movie with Samuel L. Jackson. It was called The Negotiator, and he is playing this guy that's a negotiator. He gets blamed for some stuff. They send in another negotiator who is Kevin Spacey, and Kevin Spacey starts to figure out this guy isn't crazy. But you go through all these psychological turns and twists that I didn't know about or understand at the time because I'd never been really exposed to this world. So our guest today, and Amanda and he will play off each other because they are on the same crisis intervention team, and really that is what we actually call negotiators. Sergeant Terris Thomas from Byram PD.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. I'm glad to have you here.
Yes.
So Terris and I knew each other from TikTok long before anything else, right?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So if you don't follow him on TikTok, he does all the fun things. He's like the funny TikTok guy. Terris, give us a little bit about your history, about your career.
I'm going to my 17th year in law enforcement. Started off as a campus police officer. Then I went to Jackson Police Department, stayed there a couple of years, and now I'm here at the Byron Police Department.
Right. You know, we've had a lot of Jackson PD officers on this podcast, and just one thing that's y'all always have great stories. So I'm excited about that. To our listeners and viewers, if you have comments, you can put them, as long as we're live, you can put them under the comments in Facebook, and we'll see them, and we can get to those questions while we're still live. If you're listening on the podcast, thanks for downloading. Just send us your questions, and maybe we'll be able to get to them if we see them on Facebook. So let's get started, guys. Amanda, how did you first get involved with CIT?
Well, gosh, honestly, I went to the FBI certified negotiator class the day after I received my crown for Miss Mississippi for America Strong. So I was kind of tired, but I've kind of always wanted to be a negotiator. I just really like talking to people, which is funny because for a very long time I was a horrible communicator within my family and relationships and whatever. And so I think that I kind of forced my career down a path that made me a really great communicator. So it's kind of funny.
Absolutely. Well, and now I've been calling you Terris because that's how I know you. Would you rather be Sergeant Thomas?
Terris is good.
Okay. All right. So Terris, tell me about what got you interested in this and involved in CIT.
Well, interesting. Like you said, I've watched a couple movies. I think the movie that I watched was Inside Man with Denzel Washington. And yes, that definitely got me on that path because I saw how he was able to talk to suspects and things like that. And the way he did it and the way he talked, you know what I'm saying? It's just his swag, is the way he moved and things like that, brought me into that. So that really just, did something for me.
Well, and I have to say that in this room, we have two very distinctly different types of personalities. So the idea that you have to be a certain kind of person in order to do this job is not correct.
Yeah, the team, and it is a team. Negotiations is not an individual person. It's not a single player game. And you do have to have resources. You need men, you need women, you need Black, you need white, you need Hispanic, Asian. You need something for everyone because you never know what the person in crisis is experiencing. Maybe it's in relation to a female, and so they're not going to want to talk to a female. Or maybe it's racially motivated, and so they're not going to want to talk to one race versus the other. So you have to have a kind of a hodgepodge of people to pull from, and a collection of experiences.
She's so right. Because yes, you definitely have to have be diverse.
Mhm.
You know, the team has to be diverse to get your things to happen. So my thing, we had one time where we had the male that was in Utica.
Oh yeah.
And say he saw the authority figure, with the male. So when Amanda started talking to him, he started soft voice. So he gelled more with her.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I wanted to ask too, because when I went through the FBI Citizens Academy, we actually had a day where we talked about hostage negotiation, and I got chosen from the class to be one of the negotiators. So I went in there, and the role player was a guy playing a veteran who had taken 7 children hostage. And, I'm talking to him, and he ends up cussing me and didn't want to talk to a woman. They bring a guy in there. Well, the guy ends up getting all the kids killed. But the thing was, it was like in that exercise, they wanted us to understand what it felt like to fail. And man, they were fake kids, and it was a fake hostage situation, and I felt awful. How do they
Intense.
prepare you for these situations?
Same way. They put us through strenuous scenarios and things, and they go through everything. Like they'll go through the ups, they go through the downs. If you're wrong, I mean, if you're right, they'll switch up on you. You know what I'm saying? They try to make you think on your feet. So that's the thing to do, is thinking on your feet when you're a negotiator.
Now, can y'all tell me about a situation? I realize that some of the ones that are recent are still going to be closed. You can't really talk about the investigation, but can you tell me a situation that just generally that has happened where you've had to work together as a team to get somebody to come out?
Well, I don't know that there's any one instance that we can really speak on. However, I know that with Clinton and with Byram, we are a part of the Hinds County Metro negotiations team. So it includes Hinds County Sheriff's Department. Have we gotten anyone from? I don't think we have anyone from Terry yet. And then, of course, Capitol Police, although not actively a part of the unit, they will respond. We have several JPD members on the unit. And so just that alone forces us to work together. And, of course, we are kind of a secondary role to the SWAT team. So if we get a SWAT call out, then the negotiators respond, because we never know if it will be a negotiation type of situation. And just in that, we have to work together as a team, and then kind of wait for SWAT to tell us, like, yeah, we're going to establish communication, because really there's a huge tactical component to everything. Because if we can't establish communication safely, then we're not going to. I'm trying to think of, I can't really think of any situations in particular.
Well, so I guess one thing that we see in the movies all the time is you've got the negotiators, sitting there trying to make contact, like, hey, man, I've got him right here. And SWAT comes in and like, no, we're kicking the door down now. That's all Hollywood, isn't it?
Sometimes it is, because sometimes, we do have, if it's long, honestly, truly, whenever you're starting with negotiations, you have to be patient.
Yeah.
Sometimes it may take 30 minutes to get them out. Sometimes it may take them a couple of hours. So, but we do understand that, those guys are out there holding positions for hours and hours. People get tired. But you still got to understand the situation that the suspect, and whether or not they have hostages or either they're just, barricaded there by themselves, they're going through something. So we have to sit there and, decipher what they are going through and try to talk them down. You know what I'm saying? They might be going through an episode, or, or they just going through something.
Sure.
So we definitely have to sit there, talk them down, make sure that everybody gets out safely.
So, Amanda, I know when you got your crown, it's been like a year and a half ago now, right?
2023.
So, yeah, rough in that. So you've been doing this about 2 years. Terris, how long have you been doing it?
It's been about 2 years.
About 2 years? Okay. Because I was thinking about, when I was kind of thinking about doing this podcast, I thought about the hostage negotiator who talked to the Dallas cop killer. He went up in that parking garage, and the negotiator talked to him for, hours. And then finally, what they had to do was send the robot in, and the robot killed the killer. The interesting article that I read was just kind of talking to the negotiator from, after the fact, like what was that like, whatever. And he said, gosh, I think about it every day. I carry that guy with me, as evil and awful as he was. He became a part of me because that was the last conversation he ever had. Do you find, and maybe obviously not in such a tragic situation, but there have been some tragic situations. Do you find that these people that you end up talking to, do you think about them later? Does it become kind of something that sticks with you?
Yeah, it does stick with you a little bit because you always try to think, what could I have done different? Or, if it's a fatal situation, like, okay, what are the things I could have done that might have tiered that situation different. So yes, it definitely goes with you. That's why we have to have counseling, because some of the things that we go through, the things that we see, we hear these person's last wishes or their last breath, or sometimes they'll say, can I speak to my mom, or can I speak to my kids? And definitely when we hear those kind of things like that, they're thinking about, it could be the end. So sometimes we try to deter from letting them speak to them. Like, hey, okay, let's keep talking. Tell me what's going on.
Yeah.
Things like that. To try to keep them going. Because majority of the time, when they do want to speak to their family members or they want to speak to somebody close to them, it's usually that time.
Right. It's like they're getting there. So, what are some other things that you see in the movies that are not necessarily true to life, or maybe they are? I mean, I think the thing is, like, this is not quite like FBI profilers, but kind of the same. I think people are fascinated with this aspect of law enforcement because it has so much brain work involved, and it's so much about reading people and knowing how to respond.
Yeah. So within the negotiations team, we actually operate in silence.
Yes.
We try very hard to either confine ourselves to a vehicle or a room, somewhere where outside law enforcement can't hear us, and so that the person in crisis can't hear other people, because that could be a trigger for them. If you never want to lie to the person in crisis, and if you tell them that you're the only person talking to them, you're the only person listening, and then all of a sudden they hear chatter over here, well, now you have broken trust. Yeah. And that's the whole goal, is building rapport to eventually get them back to like a baseline so that we can evoke a change in their behavior. So we will literally have to kick people out. We've kicked chiefs and sheriffs out because they want to be in the know, and we appreciate that. And we have to assign a person, a liaison, to feed information back and forth. But we operate through a main negotiator, the primary negotiator, and then you have the coach, who is also listening in and then maybe writing down notes on sticky notes. So Post-it is I wish they would sponsor law enforcement, because we go through Post-its like it's going out of style, and we'll just write quick little notes and pass it. And then we have another member who is writing important information on what we call a situation board. And it'll be, information about the person in crisis, maybe about the situation, or triggers that you don't want to talk about anymore. Like if this is a domestic situation and you bring up their spouse and they become extremely angry, you now know you no longer want to talk about the spouse, and that's going to be written on the board, probably in big red letters, so that hey, let's not bring up the spouse anymore. And again, we'll have someone who's like writing down like a log of, at this time we made contact, at this time we lost contact, and then we have that liaison, and it's all done in silence.
Yeah, so the movies where you see, negotiators putting on the vest and going out there and talking to them like, hey, what I'm here, I'm bringing you pizza and all that.
Right.
No, that is definitely not true. You do not see us.
Right.
At all.
Well, and so that begs the question then, how many times has somebody asked for a helicopter?
I haven't had that experience yet. But also, and I might be speaking on behalf of you, but we haven't dealt with anyone who actually had a hostage. Only 4% of negotiation calls will ever involve a hostage.
Yeah.
It's typically a person in crisis. Usually it's some type of mental, behavioral health type of situation. But it can also be domestic, things like someone who's like, I'm not going to jail, things of that nature. So I've never had anyone ask for a helicopter, but
Or
I
a
have
getaway
had,
car.
yeah,
Right.
I have had people ask, can I talk to my mom? Can I talk to my, whatever? And we, instead of offering for them to talk to that person, because as Terris said, that could be a sign of things to come. That could also, that person might actually be a trigger for them.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, we redirect it and say, well, tell me, what would you say to that person if they were on the phone right now?
Sure.
Or if you could talk to them right now. And then they, if they're comfortable enough, will tell us what they want to say. And then we'll say, we'll try and get that message to them and then redirect.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So how often do you find that people kind of respond in a trusting way to you? I mean, it seems like if you're in that situation where you've locked yourself in a house, like pretty much it's not messing with anybody. I'm having a moment.
Really, like you said, you have to have that voice. It's like the calm in the storm. Because if they're sitting there yelling and screaming, but you're sitting there like, well, hey, look, I see that you're upset. I see that, things are going on. How can we help? As long as you keep that calm voice, usually that brings them down. If they see that you're upset, they're gonna stay upset. So that's why we try to, train ourselves to not get, too excited or things like that, just to stay calm, make sure that everything's calm, cool, and collective. And that usually brings them down when they hear that calm, soothing voice.
Sure. Now, Terris, your patrol when you're not being a negotiator, right?
Right.
Okay, and Amanda's a detective.
Mhm.
So how does this translate in the other duties that you have as law enforcement officers? Like, do you find yourself using these things? I'm going to ask first in the job, and then we'll go to the personal life.
Well, yeah, yes, in the job definitely. When we make traffic stops and things like that, and the person's upset, like, well, look, I didn't run this, I didn't do that. We're like, hey, look, I see that upset. You might be running behind late for work, but hey, look, let's take care of this business now, and then I'll let you go on about your way. And usually by that time they'll say thank you. You know what I'm saying? You were very professional and things like that. That changed their whole demeanor like that. So. Yeah, it definitely helps. Or when we go to a domestic situation and you separate the two and you talk to the person that's the aggressor at the time and you see that they're upset, like, okay, hey, look, I might have been, I ain't gonna say necessarily we lied to them. We might fabricate the truth a little bit. Like, hey, look, I've been through your situation before. I see that you're upset. I've been in that situation as well. So and then when you build that rapport with them, they usually calm down. So yeah,
Sure.
it definitely helps.
Absolutely. Amanda, what about you?
Yeah, I use this type of stuff all the time. We use active listening skills. That is the key factor for negotiations. And there's, of course, there's an acronym, more pies, and there's for every letter, there's a thing that you do throughout the negotiation. But it forces you to listen not just to the words that they're saying, but you have to identify the emotions that are coming through in what they're saying. And so oftentimes in an investigation or something, someone might be super upset about this one thing that seems so insignificant. And I can kind of use the active listening skills and be like, you sound really betrayed.
Yeah.
And then they'll be like, yeah. And then they'll tell me all this stuff.
Right.
And it talks them down, and then they're a little more rational. And then I can explain to them, like, yeah, maybe your case isn't going anywhere, but I listen to you, I hear you, I validate you. But yeah, I mean, it helps with all kinds of situations, with diffusing stuff and helping people. Everyone wants to feel heard.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and Terris, you and I don't hang out as much as Amanda and I do, obviously. But there have been times that we've been talking, Amanda and I, and I've been talking about, like, I mean, all I really want to do is just one day I want to own a home. Like, I just want something of my own. And one day she's like, I hear you talking about wanting to own a home, but I think you just want somewhere that you belong. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's it. And
Gotcha.
that was what y'all do, isn't it?
And I didn't even realize that's what I was doing because it's just we've trained it.
Yes.
Right.
And we
Now
use
we
it
know
in
it.
everyday life.
Yeah.
It's weird like that. But yeah, we definitely use it.
So, Terris, do you use it in relationships?
Yeah, what do you do with the girlfriend that you're fighting with?
Right.
Well, basically, it's all about listening. So, of course, if they're sitting there yelling and screaming, but of course, you got to sit there and be like, hey, look, I don't understand everything that you're saying, but I do hear you.
Mm-hmm.
I do understand. And then,
Well,
just
and
like
so
that.
obviously now we've got Daniel in the room, so you're not outnumbered. But obviously, as a woman, of course, and I'm asking for the women in your life. So when you do that, though, that's genuine, or
Yes.
is it?
I mean, yeah, well, of course, you want to be genuine because you don't never want to hurt anybody's feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, what I'm saying, you do want to, show remorse, and you do want to show that you do care.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, of course, when I use it, I do care.
Well, and so, okay, I have to ask this then. Amanda, you and I talk about psychology and all that kind of stuff all the time. And my question then becomes, how much of this is stuff that you would do just as a decent human being, but we're being trained to do it because sometimes as humans we forget?
I think that if we were raised to know how to do this type of stuff, I think that this is something that would be so natural and that more people would do it. But I think that human nature is to be selfish. And so we prefer to actively listen to our own feelings and thoughts and emotions and words instead of someone else. So it does take a certain characteristic of selflessness to be able to do this, but it's something that I think we shouldn't have to be trained to do it. It should be something that we're just raised to do.
So, okay, talk to me then, Terris, about a time that you had to use it that you feel like it really de-escalated something, if there's something you can talk. Again, I recognize there are things that you can't because they're still in court or whatever like that, but.
Okay, let me think. There was.
And you don't even have to say where or, just there was a lady that, whatever.
Well, there was a situation where we did have a suspect that did commit a crime, and you could see that it was weighing on his heart, but he didn't want to confess. So at the time, I tried to build a rapport with him, let him know like, hey, look, you didn't kill anybody, you didn't hurt, nobody was really hurt. So, it's not that big of a deal. It's called minimizing. You try to minimize the crime to show that, it's not as big as they think it is.
Right.
So then, once I talked with him a little bit more, he started, getting a little bit more comfortable. And by that time, he, finally just took a deep breath and he confessed to what he did. And I was like, wow, that does work. So
Just getting on
Yeah.
the same page. Then.
oh yeah, definitely building that rapport, getting that one-on-one with them. So once they get comfortable enough to see that, hey, look, this person might understand what I'm actually going through, then they'll go ahead and say what they need to say.
So, as a man, do you find that you work better with men or with women? Because, as a woman, no offense to Amanda, but if another woman's trying to tell me how I need to be feeling, I'm about to blow up. Now, there are days that a man can't tell me either, but I feel like, a soft-spoken man could talk me down a little better. And I think everybody's individual, but what do you find in that in your life?
Well, I deal more with the males because I usually get on that family aspect. So like, if most guys are mama's boys.
Yeah.
So, if you get to them and say like, hey, how would your parents feel? How would your mom feel like that? And then when you get that to them and they see that, okay, like, they'll start thinking, yeah, no, my mom wouldn't like this or my mom would like that. And then they'll start breaking down. Next thing you know, I walk over to them, touch them on their shoulder. Once you touch them on their shoulder, and they get that, and it breaks them.
Yeah.
And I learned that from my lieutenant, Lieutenant Kendrick. He taught
That's
me
a
that
good
one.
one.
It was good.
Yeah, I can see him being good at that.
Oh yeah.
Now, Amanda, what about you? What do you find when it comes to working with the different genders?
I mean, because I work with men all the time, I've conditioned myself to work with men. I will say, this is just a weird kind of story, but in the FBI negotiator class, the last like 2 days of the class are practicals, and they will bring back past graduates to be the role players. And I was a role player in one of the last classes. And so obviously I was a person in crisis, and a female was the first negotiator to talk to me. And I was not prepared for this like visceral reaction that I had. And I was like, you better get someone else to talk to me. And I mean, that feeling was real.
Yeah.
I was not a real person in crisis until she started talking to me, and I was like, oh,
Right.
no. So just based off of that, I feel like 100% better with males than females.
Well, and it's a crazy thing. And I think that it is natural in many ways. And I'm sure there are women that might argue with this, but in many cases, I think that it's true that women, we have this natural competition. So it's like, girlfriend, this is my moment. I need you to back up. But if he comes in here all sweet talking and soft voice, then I might be like, all right, so I'm listening. Keep talking.
Yes.
So when you're dealing with something like, you've got a hostage situation, you got a standoff, whatever like that, how do you how do you negotiate isn't the right word, but you've got SWAT over here doing their side of the job. You've got you guys and you're ready to do your side of the job. How do you figure out when each of you takes the role? So obviously there's a time for negotiations and a time for SWAT team to kick in the door.
Well, I would say that we definitely, like you said, we have a liaison that goes back and forth that try to communicate with SWAT. Majority of the time, what we do, we try to make sure we position the suspect or the subject to a place where they can always be seen. I believe one time we had a guy. He said, he was worried that he had a gun, so he was like, I want to go in the front room. Like, is it okay for me to go to the front? Yes, go to the front room. That way we always knew where he was at. Yeah. And one time we like, hey, can I go to the bathroom? Like, where's the bathroom located? It's down the hall, wherever it was. And we were like, okay, you can go there. And we relayed to the SWAT, okay, SWAT, he's over on this side of the building in this bathroom. So yeah, that's how we actually work together, with SWAT. So that way we let them know where he is, where the suspect is at all time, and that way they can always keep eye on him.
So and I can only speak for the SWAT team within Hinds County. Obviously, I haven't worked with another SWAT team, but the commanders that are over the SWAT team in Hinds County have a great appreciation for negotiations and utilizing us as a tool, because we are. So they are adamant that as long as we can make contact and as long as they're talking, or we can at least hear them breathing, they're standing down. Because at the point that they have to make the decision to make entry, that is now a possibility that someone could be hurt, whether it's the person in crisis or one of our officers. So they would much rather us keep communications and wear them down until they give up than risk going in and risking some type of injury. And I was very impressed the first time that I heard that, because I did expect them to be like, are y'all not done yet? Like, we're kicking in the door.
Right.
But we have an understanding that based off of the information that they have, they will always first try to initiate contact. And if we can establish contact, whether that is through having the person in crisis, like their cell phone number, and so we'll just call their cell phone, or we'll try and get a family member's phone to call the cell phone, or we can utilize what we refer to as a throw phone, where SWAT would have to physically get this phone into the location of the person in crisis, and then we would then call in to that phone. And then it's just kind of a waiting game. And again, we know ahead of time that we are possibly buying time. There are people who just aren't going to give up.
Yeah.
And so we might be used as a stall tactic where we are gathering information, everything that this person is telling us about the layout of the house or whether there are weapons, all kinds of things, whether there are people, whether there are animals, if there's, oh yeah, this is the back door and it's, boarded up, or in one instance, the guy kept on referring to the front door and the back door, but what he referred to as the front and back door was not what we have referred to as the front and back door. It was just the positioning of the trailer. And so trying to get a better understanding of what do you mean by that while making sure you're asking questions that aren't very cop-like. Where are you located in the residence?
Right.
What is surrounding you? What you have to ask very open-ended questions, make it conversational, make it about them. And then I think at the point that we lose contact, or at the point that it becomes like an active danger, that's kind of when SWAT will say, all right, negotiations are over.
It's that time.
We're going in. And they'll also use us to prepare the person in crisis for something that is about to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're going to make a tactical move to reposition or something, we'll say, hey, I just want you to know that we do have a tactical unit that's near, this corner of the house. They're moving. Don't worry. They're not coming in, reassuring them, which then builds more rapport and trust. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and another thing, when I was at the FBI Citizens Academy, I also got to play hostage taker a couple times, and they would give me a scenario. You're somebody who has XYZ mental health issue, or, you just lost your baby, or you think you see cartoon characters or things like that. And trying to act that out, it was hard to act crazy. I mean, like you said, until they hit the right trigger. And on occasion they would, and I would legitimately feel like, no, not today. But it's interesting because I learned as much doing that as I did in the negotiating class itself. I mean, the day we spent on negotiating was not a class like y'all took. But so tell me about just when you're talking to these people and they're a little bit deluded. They're just in a different place. I mean, sometimes mental health does that. How do you break through on that level?
Well, you try to bring them back to reality. It's hard sitting there and people are trying to tell you, like, oh, well, this person told me this or this person told me that, and they're the only person there. So we don't want to discredit them like, no, nobody's there. What are you talking about? Just, we try to say, okay, we may not understand. We may not hear them, but I believe that you hear them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Give them that reassurance, showing that, okay, yes, they understand. They kind of understand what I'm saying, so they don't lose that trust with us. So, we try our best to, one, like I said, the active listening that Amanda spoke about. We listen to what they say and repeat it back to them. If we repeat the things back to them that they said, they're like, okay, this person is listening to me. So that's the things that we're trained to do, is listen to them and repeat it back to them, and to show that we are listening to what they're saying.
Yeah, kind of throughout our conversations as well, we do what we refer to as minimal encouragers, which is the M in more pies, where as you are on, we'll just say the phone, if we're on the phone with this person and they're talking, you want to say, yeah, okay. And it lets them know you're still there, you are listening. And it's just that little thing that keeps them talking, which I always find very interesting.
Because if you're silent,
yeah.
That's when they get upset when you're silent and not saying anything.
Well, you think about a normal argument. You're arguing with your boyfriend and he's not talking back. You're like, oh, now it's getting worse, buddy.
Right?
Like,
Are you
better
even
say
listening?
something. Yeah.
Yes.
So what is the phrase? Is there a phrase? Or is there a moment where things turn where you think, okay, he's about to come out? Or where you realize, okay, we've broken through?
I don't know that there's really a moment, because you kind of have to prepare the person. Once they decide, okay, yeah, I think I'm ready to come out, you then immediately have to jump into, okay, they're going to come in through this door, or you're going to exit through this door. You need to come out with your hands up. So you kind of immediately jump into a very calm but tactical type of conversation. But I do know that whenever you're kind of communicating with this person in crisis and they do something that is concerning, like maybe you hear a loud bang or they start yelling or whatever, we have what's referred to as the I message, where you say, I feel when you, because. So it's, I feel concerned when you don't respond to me because I'm not able to communicate with you, or, something to that effect. Or, I feel frustrated when you yell because I'm not able to listen. And you put the focus on you, like you. I put the focus on me,
Right.
and that I am having a feeling instead of you need to stop yelling. It's, I am struggling with you yelling. And they then, I don't even know how to explain it, but they almost feel like they're doing you a favor, like they're then the ones helping you.
Right.
And again, it's just another rapport building. And that's a huge thing you can take into your work life, your relationships, family. It's just making it about you and how you feel in a situation and explaining it to that other person so that they're like, oh, wow, I didn't realize you felt that way.
It feels like 90% of people are going to be like, oh, I didn't mean to make you feel uncomfortable because I yelled, or, like, let me change my tactic. Because as people, most people are people pleasers. But what do you do when that person says, MFR, I don't give a damn how you feel when I yell? What do you do then?
You still keep that calm voice, like, let them know, like, hey, I see that you're upset. What is making you upset? You know what I'm saying? You try to, what's the word I'm like, sway away from, what they're talking about, and kind of like go in another general direction, but always keep that soft voice that it's like, okay, this person's not going to get upset with me as well, so I might as well, calm down. Or, if you're going up high, of course, they're going to keep going up high. So if you come down low, they're going to eventually start coming down.
Yeah, it's very opposite of typical law enforcement behavior.
Right.
Because we are kind of taught and trained that once someone escalates to a certain point, we escalate to just above that, to take back the power, establish. But in negotiations, we have to be very even keel. And Terris, you already have that like radio voice.
Oh, yeah.
It's very white over there.
But in negotiations, we are supposed to keep almost a monotone voice about you, and that's something that I struggle with because I naturally use inflection and things like that. So I have to very intentionally make sure to speak lower and calmer. And
But it's interesting because it's so funny how our lives translate, like our professional lives translate into our personal lives. Because as a reporter, I find myself using a lot of my interview tactics or conversation techniques in everyday life because I've been trained and I have practiced it, and it just becomes who I am. And I can tell you that there are times that we're talking about something and you'll go monotone, and I never thought about it being Negotiator, Amanda, until just now. And so at some point I would be like, I need a helicopter. Well,
Yes.
and so you look at these things and it kind of feels like, are there calls, maybe domestics, where you feel like you are actually kind of a counselor?
We're a counselor regardless going to these calls because we're marriage counselors. We're everything. And I guess they expect us to have the answers to everything. And I tell them, even when I go to calls where children are involved, and they were like, my 50-year-old doesn't want to listen. I'm like, ma'am, look, I can't fix in 15 minutes what you didn't do in 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't be the dad in the situation if the dad's not around. You know, so I can talk to him for a minute, but it's on you to be the parent. I can just be, you know, the moderator.
Yeah.
You know, and try to help the situation. But don't expect me to come in and be, you know, the marriage counselor or the parent that you're not being. But that's what we get called for. We have to try our best to do what we can to try to, you know, de-escalate the situation.
So when you get called to a domestic situation, are there things that you've learned in this training that prepare you that maybe you'll see danger signs before maybe you would have if you hadn't had the training?
Well, for one, separating them. For one, I always separate the two, you know, okay, because of course they were called there because they were arguing. So try to if you are there with a partner or somebody, have them step outside and you talk with them. But always never let them out of your sight. Always keep them, you know, I got to go in the room. It's like, well, don't go in the room. You just don't need to go in the room. Let's just stand out here. Let's talk and see what's going on. So that's why I always make sure I tell them, even my rookies when I train them, hey, look, make sure that you always keep your eye on that person.
Mm-hmm. So, Amanda, when you are dealing with, say, I guess we don't say interrogation anymore, we say interview, but you're talking to a suspect, does this help you get information out of them?
Oh, absolutely. Really, again, listening to what people aren't saying and seeing their emotions and then identifying it and then kind of helping them work through it, because whatever that emotion is a wall. And so once you can identify it and then identify why they have that emotion, and then they're like, okay, yeah, that is how I feel. Exactly, yeah. And I'm like, okay, so let's move past it. And then we move past it and then right on into a confession. And I'm like, this is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that, again, human nature, like you can't deny human nature. And people want to be heard, seen, and understood. I think that is outside of, you know, food, shelter, you have love.
Yeah.
And that's a form of love.
Acceptance. Yeah.
And yeah, being able to listen to someone and not relate to them, but understand, even if you haven't yourself been through something like that, or just validating, like, I can't imagine how that must make you feel. Yeah, I think that it really helps people to want to do better and be honest.
You know, and I want to jump back to what we were talking about earlier. If they escalate and you have to de-escalate, I was a junior high teacher for 3 years, and it was tumultuous, to say the least. And one thing that I learned while I was doing that is if they're all screaming and you try and scream over them, all that's going to happen is every teacher on the hall hears you losing control of your class. But if you just start talking in a normal tone of voice, if you start whispering, eventually, and it doesn't always work, but eventually the class will come down to see what you're talking about, you know? And so I've used that in, you know, volatile situations since, just simply because I realized if you talk quietly, eventually they're going to get tired of yelling and they're going to want to know what you're saying so they can yell some more. And then that's where you can get them. So this stuff is applicable across the board. Yes. Terris, tell me, in your opinion, has learning how to do this, I mean, I understand, like, it doesn't change your personal morals or your personal character, but has it made you a better person to know kind of what's behind these emotions, to kind of be schooled in how to do these things so that you can handle people a little bit better, but also handle yourself in those situations?
Yes, I believe some of these things I've learned now, I wish I'd known when I first joined law enforcement. I mean, because for one, all the fights and all the things that I got into, you know, it was because I didn't have these tools to use. And of course, first I want to do, like you said, as a young officer, my dominance. I'm going in, I'm the police. So I'm here to take charge. But if I would have known to come in and, you know, have a level head and like, hey, look, let's talk it out. Let's make sure, because everybody thinks that police officers, well, most of the police officers think our gun is our biggest tool, the mouth.
Right.
talking your way out of situations. That is the biggest tool that we have in law enforcement. If we can sit there and talk the biggest person down from them on a 100 and you're down on 10, and we can talk them down, that is the biggest thing in law enforcement that keeps us from getting hurt and make sure everybody goes home at the end of the day.
Well, and if you're listening instead of watching, what you don't see is that Terris is a pretty big dude. You played college football, right? Or-
No, I was a tumbler.
Okay.
Yeah, I threw girls up
Oh,
there.
that's right. That's right. No, I knew you did something strong. Anyway,
Yes.
big dude. So, long story short, like you would be the guy that sometimes what I've noticed is people want to pick a fight with the big dude.
Always.
So, has this been, and to me, it's kind of ironic that the big dude that you might want to pick a fight with is the guy with the big smile that's going to talk you out of being mad.
Yes.
Is that a good contrast for you?
Yes. My folks paid a lot of money for these to get these teeth fixed. So I show them every time when I go to a call. I'm gonna smile. I'm gonna show you that, hey, look, I'm here to help. And I always tell them, if a person's upset and mad, and if I can get them to make them smile or laugh, I got you.
Yeah.
I got you, and I know that I can turn this situation around. So,
That's
yes.
another thing that applies in personal relationships too. Have a fight, the minute you start laughing, the fight's over.
Yes, it is.
Effectively.
Mhm.
Amanda, it's kind of the flip side for you. You are the little bitty girl that he would have been throwing in the air in college.
Mhm. Yeah.
So what's it like for you? Because I mean, obviously in some situations we've heard of, you have a situation, somebody's going to attack the woman because they think they can overpower her, but you've got to be able to negotiate your way around that or out of it, right?
Right. I guess my entire career, I've kind of always talked my way out of situations. I've always been able to diffuse the situation. I can remember an instance, one of the previous agencies that I worked with, I had to go and arrest somebody for like shoplifting or something. And I was fairly new at that agency, and there were male officers that were just talking to this person that I then had to handcuff and walk to my car and transport to the jail. And I was so mad because I was like, y'all are hyping this person up and then y'all are going to leave. And who's here but little old me
Mm-hmm.
to have to either fight or talk him back down after I
Right.
had already talked him down once.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and again, I think that it is because men are raised with the understanding of, we're going to finish a fight or last word, like in law enforcement, like we're always going to get the quote unquote last word.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you might say something else, guess what? You're going to jail. So
Right.
last word.
Last word.
But yeah,
Straight to jail.
correct.
Mhm.
Do not pass go.
Right.
Not clear to
So yeah, I've kind of always needed to be the person that like let stuff go. And now that I have received this type of training, I'm the person that if I'm out, just like if somebody's doing a traffic stop, and I haven't been on the road in quite some time, but I tend to be the person that, all right, well, I'm going to stay here with this person and I'm going to talk to them while you're searching their vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to talk to them and they can take their time, and I'm going to find out all about how they grew up on a farm and they have 3 sisters
Right.
and, just all kinds of stuff that could be beneficial to whatever it is that they're investigating on the roadside.
Yeah, and I firmly believe the most information we can learn about each person we come across is helpful because you never know when that person with the farm and 3 sisters is the guy that's barricaded because, his daughter's not talking to him and his mama just left him. I don't know.
He just lost the farm.
Right, he just lost the farm, sure.
Exactly.
So, okay, parting thoughts. Terris, what do you feel like? Do you feel like this training is something that, and we're talking ideal world, there's a million talking heads out there that'll say all police should have EMT training, all police should have XYZ training, whatever. But do you feel like this is something that street officers, that patrol officers, could benefit from just knowing a little bit more about it?
Yes, they definitely can benefit from it. Like I said, when we go into stressful situations, your main thing is make sure that nobody gets hurt, you don't get hurt, everybody goes home at the end of the day. So yes, this training here is definitely something that any street officer would benefit from. So I definitely advocate for people to go through this kind of training.
Yeah. Now, how is it? Would you say in your career, try and envision a career where you hadn't done this kind of training? What do you think the difference would be?
I would say I worked in retail before too. So I would say just getting to know that person and while getting to know them, getting to know things about them to try to help sell that product. Like okay, I like this and that color. I like going doing this. Well, okay, well look, this color looks good on you. So why don't you try to try this on and do this and do that? So yeah, I think it would help in everyday life.
Yeah, across the board. What about you, Amanda? So imagine a life where you didn't do this training and you didn't get all your degrees on TikTok in psychotherapy like we do.
Right. I honestly think that I wouldn't be as good of an investigator, as good at really pinpointing that one little thing that I can see is holding someone back. But even still, like this training has helped me communicate or choose not to communicate with people within my agency. So this kind of stuff, I think that it will one day make me a better leader. So I don't want to think of a time when I didn't have this training.
Right. Well, for those of us who got our negotiating degree from watching Samuel L. Jackson, all I learned is that when you're lying, you look up and to the left, or maybe it was up and to the right. As many times as I watched that movie, I never could remember what he told Nebaum just before Nebaum got shot. So anyway, any other parting thoughts before we go? You good?
Things good. Yes, I
All
enjoyed myself.
Good. Amanda?
No, I think I'm good. I'm all talked out for the day.
Yeah. We've all had a long day at work, and it is a little warm in here. For those of you that are watching, if you see us sweating through our clothes, it's just because the AC's on the fritz a little, but Daniel has done a good job to get us some air. We want to thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching Investigation Homicide every week. We really appreciate you guys as our listeners and our viewers. If you need a podcast, Daniel Anderson is your guy, Audio Alchemy. You may see him all over the Facebook, the internet, and that's because there are a whole lot of us that use him because he does a great job and has a great product. So, need a podcast? Hit us up. We'll get you to Daniel. Thank you for joining us. Next week have Derek Jordan talking about the Mary Heather Spencer case. That was a big one, I think, around 2007, and we'll be ready to tell you all about that. Have a great night.